On today's show, when the Capitals training camp starts, they will have Jakub Vrana there on a PTO.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, am I caught in a time warp? Jakub Vrana, yes, that Jakub Vrana has been extended an invite to join the Capitals at training camp on a PTO basis. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We will talk about how more and more players are showing up at the informal skates, most recently here, Pierre-Luc Dubois. And then in the final segment, we will talk about the potential lines as we edge ever closer to the start of camp and really the season. But just to get it going here, wow, that was the huge news this morning. I'm going to say one thing covering this team, and more particular right now, has caught me by the most surprise. There have been changes that I have not anticipated, changes that have come out from left field that I never expected to happen in a million years. You take a look at Chris Patrick as the new GM, the Capitals buying or acquiring Cap Friendly, and now Jakub Vrana is now going to be on the Capitals on a PTO basis. Wow. I mean, I guess you couldn't have scripted this out, but there is a certain amount of excitement that abounds as another player from a bygone era. I think you know the era in which I speak of. The 2018 Stanley Cup winning team is potentially going to join the team. And, you know, it's one of the things I think it was the right thing to do, a very low risk move. If you know what I'm trying to say is it's a PTO. If it doesn't work out, hey, we tried. The one thing I know is that he was a fan favorite. He was a guy that had the need for speed. It fits the narrative of the team getting quicker and potentially could be a goal scorer. I mean, we don't know for sure if that is going to be the case, but there is at least a potential upside. But once we get going talking about Jakub Vrana here, he is a guy that has had some troubles in his personal life and that kind of thing, and has never really found the magic that he had with the Capitals, the high water mark for Jakub Vrana, or Jakub Vrana, as he was originally called. I think that from his home country is what they call him. In the 1920 season, in 69 games, he scored 25 goals and 27 assists. And then the 2018-19 season, in 82 games, 24 goals, 23 assists. We then know that he went out to the Red Wings and never really found his way out there. The high water mark for him on the Red Wings was 13 goals in the 21-22 season. And this last season, that was a rough one. Only in 21 games, 2 goals, 4 assists. So the Capitals are looking to have a change and bring back a certain level of familiarity. And I like this move on a lot of different levels because, again, it is that fondness of a Capitals team when they were very successful. And when you think about it, TJ Oshie potentially might not be on the team this year, and they are looking for a guy that could potentially score goals. We know that we had PLD, we added Andrew Mangiapane, but it's always a good idea to have a lot of options, and quite a stunning move by the Capitals. The Capitals have announced that Jakub Vrana will be participating in the team's training camp on a professional tryout basis. Vrana, selected as 13th overall pick in the 2014 NHL draft, returns to the Capitals after being traded due to inconsistencies and role dissatisfaction. And, I like him. He was a great guy. I think that he was a favorite of not only the fans, but a lot of the players and the coaches as well. But he was a guy that was streaky and was very hot and cold. What kind of Jakub Vrana will the Capitals be getting? That is the question. If they can get, a fraction of what he used to be, that would be a great thing. But on a PTO, there is very low risk associated with it and a win-win for the Capitals. This opportunity presents Vrana with a chance to showcase his potential at the highest level and work with head coach Spencer Carberry. That's the big thing. That's one of the things that Spencer Carberry prides himself in, is to get more out of these younger players. And I guess he's not one of the youngest players anymore, but kind of reclamation projects. I think suffices to say Spencer Carberry likes a project, and he's going to have at least a couple of those. I think that Pierre-Luc Dubois fits that category as well. If it works out with Jakub Vrana and he does in fact join the team for the regular season, I'm going to put that on another thing of a bit of a reclamation project, as if you will. For the Capitals, the move provides a low-risk evaluation of another forward at training camp. The agreement allows Vrana to earn a contract if he impresses during the camp, or be released if he does not meet the team's expectations. The one thing I know for sure, as I record this in August, we're getting closer to September, I am super excited about the start of the season and just all these new pieces. It's so exciting to see how this is all going to gel. Is it going to live up to my expectations? Is it going to live up to your expectations? We really need to wait and see. Vrana's journey will begin with a late September camp where he will undergo standard trials alongside his teammates and emerging prospects. Despite being part of the Capitals' successful 2018 Stanley Cup winning team, Vrana underwent a trade to Detroit in 2021, followed by a shoulder injury and a stint in the NHL's player assistance program. It's one of the things. It's a common thing, and I have nothing against these players. I actually look up to them for wanting to get the help, and also a tip of the hat to the NHL for making these programs available. His subsequent tenure with the St. Louis Blues saw fluctuating performance levels with notable success in the AHL, but challenges in the NHL. And this was something that was even talked about last season and the season before, and kind of pretty much ever since Vrana left, is wouldn't that be a really great thing if Jakub Vrana came back to this team? Just to be an accurate recollection of it, I want us to all remember he was a very hot and cold player, and I don't want to be the guy to rain on the parade. I'm just kind of, I'm letting you know the playing field in front of you so we remember things accurately. Despite these adversities, Jakub Vrana retains his speed, shooting ability, and puck handling skills. His track record since departing Washington reflects promising scoring abilities, albeit accompanied by declining possession numbers and things to work on. There is a lot of players on this team that are looking to reinvent themselves, and you've seen this happen over the years. I'm talking about Sonny Milano. I'm talking about Brett Conley. And Sonny Milano, he's going to have to prove himself. There's a lot of things that are up in the air right now. Some of the players that we have sketched out right now in August might not be on the active roster when the rubber meets the road to start the season. Vrana's return to the Capitals implies a rare opportunity for the player to revive his career while the team aims to replicate its successful endeavors in player development. The decision to extend the professional tryout invitation aligns with recent trends of veteran players pursuing similar routes to extend their NHL careers, considering salary cap constraints in the league. And one of the things that has been done very well by former GM Brian McClellan and no doubt Chris Patrick is getting these deals done for the cheap. Take a look at Logan Thompson, Charlie Lindgren, number 1 and number 2 at a very low rate. and not to mention a lot of the other players on this team that aren't making a lot of money. So it's a good position, a low risk financially, and I think the upside outweighs any positive negativity. This move comes amidst an active offseason for the Caps with noteworthy additions to the forward lineup. Despite the increased competition, Vrana's history with the team and his potential as a goal scorer present an intriguing opportunity for both player and the team. While the odds may be stacked against him, Vrana's PTO journey with the Capitals underscores the mutual familiarity and potential benefits for both parties involved. So a lot is at stake. I'm really kind of pulling for Jakub Vrana. That would be a really great story for if you're a Capitals fan that has been with them at least, let's say, since the Stanley Cup. You remember Jakub Vrana and what he meant to this team. I remember certain things. I remember Joe Beninati and I remember Jakub Vrana, both who look, a little bit like they've had maybe a little bit too much to drink and having the time of their life. So a lot of fond memories of me with Jakub Vrana and what he did for this team. And if we can turn this into a really great story, this season is already kind of sketching out to be just a really fun season before the first puck is dropped. So keep it locked to Locked On Capitals, of course, as I will be following this whole story as it progresses. An exciting move for the Capitals. I'm really glad they were able to get this to all come together. All right, so coming up here after the break, more and more players are showing up at these informal skates, and one big player in particular joined the rest of them. Who am I talking about? I'll discuss straight ahead. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And we're kind of still in the dog days of sports. I know that the NFL camps are going in preseason games, and your Washington Nationals are still playing baseball. So there is still plenty to bet on. So say you're watching one of these games, say it's a Nats game, and they're not playing that well. Open up that FanDuel app. All of a sudden, the game is that much more exciting. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you for making Locked On Capitals your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's starting to look a lot like the start of the hockey season. Okay, I'm not going to sing on this show anymore, but it's an exciting time of year as a Capitals fan as things are starting to come together. We are finally making our way out of the summer and slowly into the fall, where it's informal skates right now, but then they're going to turn into full-on practices, and you're going to start to see these big players that we've heard about. PLD, we're going to see Mangiapane, Roy, Chychrun, Logan Thompson, Jakub Vrana. Excitement abounds, and I'm most excited for the start of the season and what it means. And one of the biggest pieces that was acquired actually before free agency was Pierre-Luc Dubois. Met with a lot of skepticism, a lot of question marks, a bit of optimism as well as the upside. If PLD can be even a fraction of the player he once was, is quite huge, because all things considered, he had an off season with the Kings. Let's not judge what kind of player he is in a vacuum. If you looked at his stops with Columbus and in Winnipeg, I think that, he's a pretty good player, and I think there is a good upside. So it was exciting to see video footage of him getting in some work, talking about the excitement for the upcoming hockey season is palpable as informal skates at MedStar Ice Complex continue to draw more and more players, including some notable additions to the team. One such addition is Pierre-Luc Dubois, a potential first-line center who's 6'4", 225 pounds. And I'll talk a little bit more about where these players potentially might slot in, but that is definitely one scenario. So he is a big guy, 6'4", 225 pounds. Joining the informal skates on Thursday, Dubois exuded enthusiasm and seamlessly integrated into the team, showcasing his impressive stick handling, shooting, and smooth skating abilities. And it's, he looks good. And I know that we're not in a game situation, but he looks good on the ice. And did Brian McClellan really pull a rabbit out of his hat? Is this guy that was kind of, what in the heck are the Capitals doing? Is he going to make Brian McClellan look like a genius? It very well could be the case. It'll be fun to watch it unfold. With Dubois joining the team, there's a chance that Connor McMichael could start the season playing on the wing, especially if Hendrix Lapierre makes the team after an impressive training camp. The Capitals find themselves with an abundance of talent at center, an interesting position. And it's, you can never have too many centers. I mean, I guess you can, but one of the things that for sure is injuries are always going to be a part of any season, but only 4 spots to fill. Dubois will be a fierce competitor with the likes of McMichael, Lapierre, Dylan Strome, and Nick Dowd for playtime in the middle. It's going to be an intense battle for those coveted center positions. And, and again, I don't want to get into it because that's going to be what I'm going to be talking about in the next segment, but it is going to be interesting to see, is PLD going to be the guy to get the job at the top line center? At this point, it's really kind of pointless to read into it too much because, the insiders, they have their ideas, but how often do we know that the insiders are wrong? And, this idea that you were drummed up in August and September, well, it wasn't even close to reality. It's just like every year I hear that the Oilers are going to win a Stanley Cup, or this is going to be the year for the Ottawa Senators. As we know, it's come close, I guess, for the Oilers, but in a lot of other cases, those predictions couldn't be any further from the truth. So it is exciting in just the fact to see this player that we've heard about skating around in Capitals gear and to get a look at what he looks like on the ice. And a lot of other players and former players are actually on the ice. New players and roster changes accompanying Dubois on the ice was another new face, goaltender Logan Thompson. Another exciting thing for me to see how that all shakes out between him and Charlie Lindgren, as well as familiar names such as Alex Alexiev, Nick Jensen, Anthony Mantha, and Nicholas Abe-Kubel. And why is that? Because, well, they probably have homes still in the Washington area, and that is what they're familiar with. I guess a little bit different for Anthony Mantha as he spent more time with the Golden Knights, but in any event, familiar faces and getting some work in before the formal camps start with their other respective teams. The sessions also featured the presence of some younger players looking for roles, reflecting the inclusive and collaborative spirit of the team. This offseason, the Caps made significant changes to their roster, welcoming key additions such as Dubois, Thompson, and Matt Roy, while also executing strategic trades and signings to bolster the team. Again, that's the exciting part for me, is to see how all these shiny new toys, are they as fun? Are they going to live up to all of our expectations? And ultimately, the biggest thing, forget any of our expectations, how much better is it going to make the Capitals next season? That is the question, because if they make it to the playoffs, they get eliminated, good. But my goal for them right now is to raise the bar. They made it to the playoffs, highly unlikely scenario last season. I want them to make a deeper push and, maybe second, third round. Listen, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and say win a Stanley Cup, anything of that nature, but just steps of improvement. If they could win a Stanley Cup, that would be great. I just want them to be at least better than they were the season before. Talking about preparation and training under the guidance of goaltending coach Scott Murray, these player-led sessions are not merely casual skates, but structured preparations for the upcoming season. Participants engaged in rigorous drills, culminating in a spirited shootout and focused skating exercises to enhance performance on the ice. PLD, he's excited. And what was his initial thoughts? when he joined the Caps or found out he was going to join the Caps. He said, when I learned it was Washington, I was thrilled, Dubois said, following the trade. As a kid, I was always excited to watch them on TV. They are consistently a strong team. As I grew up, I heard it's a fantastic organization with a great group of people. My initial surprise and shock turned into pure excitement after speaking with the coaching staff, management, and some players. I couldn't be more thrilled to go there. And the thing of it is we know he had an off season in LA. Maybe that change of zip code is going to be exactly what the doctor ordered. Very well could be. We see this happen quite often, not just for the Capitals, not just in the NHL, but in all of sports. Carberry talking about that, that reclamation project and how excited and what he sees in PLD. He says, I enjoy the challenge, and that's my role, Capitals head coach Spencer Carberry stated at the end of development camp. When we bring in players who have been highly productive and have significant potential, that's what coaching is about. That's what I love to do. I hope he comes here, and with the team, the coaching staff, and the environment, he can be extremely productive and achieve the potential that everyone has observed. That is the hope. That is the prayer, as more and more players are showing up at camp, these informal skates, and to see how it all materializes. Again, I would like to see certain players take a step up in their game. I think we need to see a whole lot more from Sonny Milano. I think that, there's interesting storylines. The addition of Ivan Miroshnichenko. Is he ready to take his next step? How much better is Connor McMichael with another year in the NHL under his belt? And how much better is Hendrix Lapierre after his stint and also his subsequent play with the Hershey Bears in the Calder Cup? So a lot of things to pour in the pot, stir around, marinade. It smells like hockey. It is a fun time of year. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will do that. We're going to pontificate. We're going to throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. We're talking potential lines for the Capitals. I'll discuss straight ahead. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed to Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time. Order your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So talking about potential lines, and this was something that I saw on the NHL Network Twitter feed, X, and they were talking about different teams in the NHL and where they see things shaking out. And it's, listen, that's what I talked about earlier in the show. Is PLD going to be the top line center? Is it going to be Dylan Strome? It is going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Talking about offseason roster changes during the offseason, former GM Brian McClellan made those significant changes, bringing in 7 new players through free agency. We know who they are: Mangiapane, Logan Thompson, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Chychrun, Roy, Radish, and Duhaime. At the same time, 5 regulars departed, including Darcy Kemper, Beck Malenstein, Nicholas Abe-Kubel, Nick Jensen, and Max Pacioretty. And, recently I was on Gil with Locked On NHL. Check out the little segment I was on there with him. We talked about all things Capitals, and he asked me what players that were departing do I think was a big loss. And I said, to be honest with you, not really any of them. If we take a look at Darcy Kemper, we got Logan Thompson, we got Charlie Lindgren. If that doesn't work, we got Hunter Shepard and Clay Stevenson. We're okay. Beck Malenstein, if I had to pick one player that disappointed me the most that is no longer here, is Beck Malenstein. He was the guy that did whatever it took to get a jersey on any given night. Block shots, get those dirty, grimy goals, be physical, whatever it takes. to get a job. I guess I was a little bit bummed out about it, but when you look at the return that the Capitals got when they moved up in the draft, I think we're A-okay. Nicolas Aube-Kubel, hot and cold. Nick Jensen, kind of had him circled for being on the move. And Max Pacioretty, he was one of those reclamation projects kind of that didn't work out. So let that be a bit of a cautionary tale that sometimes when you're drinking this preseason Kool-Aid that you don't get drunk, because Pacioretty was the guy that 6 different times scored 30 goals, yada, yada, yada. 2 Achilles issues, was kind of a nothing burger for the Capitals. Now, not an apples for apples comparison, as Max Pacioretty is markedly older than the players I'm talking about here. And there was a lot of risk associated. We knew it was, but not to disparage Max Pacioretty. I will always honor him and tip of the hat. When it was the trade deadline and he had the opportunity to go out to New York, he said, no, I'm going to stick with the team that took a flyer on me. And at the end of the day, was a good mentor. And, sometimes it doesn't always work out. Previous season recap, coming off a roller coaster 23-24 season where they clinched a postseason spot in the final game of the regular season, but were subsequently swept by the Rangers in the first round. Wah, wah, wah. The agony of defeat. The Capitals are aiming for a fresh start. Alex Ovechkin led the team with 31 goals, and Dylan Strome topped the points chart with 67. Charlie Lindgren stepped into the starting goalkeeper role, boasting a 25-16-7 record with a .911 save percentage. So some good things. So let's speculate. Let's pontificate. Let's talk about what might be. Hype for the upcoming season. NHL Network and NHL.com have speculated on the possible line combinations for the Caps opening night. However, there are many variables to consider, such as positioning of Pierre-Luc Dubois and young players vying for spots on the roster. Other, scenarios as well is what is going to happen with TJ Oshie. As I record this right now, there is still no definitive answer on what's going to happen. At this point, you kind of think for Oshie, and I'm here to say I love Oshie, great player, great guy. I can't say anything bad about him, but do you know if you're good to go or not? What is some of the things that we know is he was looking for some promises, some assuredness from his specialists and doctors that he wasn't going to have to go through what he went through last season. I just really hope he doesn't leave the Capitals hanging all the way up until the start of camp. But in any event, that is one scenario that we don't know. That is a variable, in an algebra situation here. We don't know. And also, what players are going to step up. Like I talked about previously, Hendrix Lapierre, Connor McMichael, Beck Malenstein. And you take a look at, potential questions on the blue line. Alex Alexiev, what kind of role does he have with the team? And what players in Hershey, those young players that I talked about, are ready for more? Ethan Frank, Vinny Iorio potentially. And I still say Dylan McIlrath. I think that, I loved his game when called up, towards the end of the season in the postseason there. A physical presence and, not a rookie by any stretch, but still a good guy, a great option. That, hey, I would like to see what he has. Let me know your thoughts on that. So let's talk about the projected lines according to, the NHL Network and NHL's Twitter feed here. So on the top line, they have Alex Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, and Tom Wilson. I don't think anyone has, anything too much to say about Ovi and Tom Wilson. That seems like, a pretty safe bet. The Dylan Strome thing, very well could be. I think that, before the addition of PLD, that was the no-brainer. So let's go down to the second line. Connor McMichael, left wing, Pierre-Luc Dubois, center, and Andrew Mangiapane, right wing. Doesn't seem too surprising. I know that Connor McMichael can play center. He can play wing. Just talk about the second and first lines here. Dylan Strome and PLD could swap out. Very well could be. It's just going to depend on how they perform in camp. We take a look at the third line. Sonny Milano, I'm here to tell you, Sonny Milano, hot and cold. He has a question mark over his head on where he fits in. And if he fits in, I really do believe it. Let's remember history. When he first came to this team, he was slated to join the Bears. So he is really going to have to bring it. Last season, there were times that he was on fire, and sometimes he was not. So talking about the third line, Sonny Milano, left wing, Hendrix Lapierre, center, and Taylor Radish, right wing on the third line. Now, what could change? I think that Connor McMichael, left wing, second line, and Hendrik Slop here, third line center, could swap, and they very well might change from time to time. Taylor Radish, he is another guy that I could see potentially being on the fourth line. So let's do that. Let's roll down to the fourth line. Left wing, Brandon Duhaime, center Nick Dowd, of course, and Alexei Protas, fourth line right wing. I think that Radish and Protas could swap back and forth there. But otherwise, Duhaime and Dowd, it's a pretty safe thing. There's no real surprises when I look at it, but it's interesting how more and more people, sources, I'm going to go ahead and say the Daily Face-Off and different sources, have picked Dylan Strome to be that top line center, despite Pierre-Luc Dubois being on the team. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens and who's going to end up being on what line. It's going to be fun to watch it all unfold. But that is what the NHL.com has slated out. So talking about projected line combinations and all of those sorts of things, both line combinations featuring Dylan Strome and first line center alongside Alex Ovechkin in PLD. Additionally, there are projections for the second, third, and fourth line, which I spoke of. Forward line adjustments and coaching strategy. This is going to be a really big thing because, as an armchair coach and an armchair GM, I might think this and I might think that. And if you're listening or watching this, you might say, hey, man, it's going to be PLD on the top line and it's going to be Dylan's. We don't know, but it's all going to depend on what Carberry and what ultimately Chris Patrick and the assistant coaches think. With numerous new faces and the Caps lineup and prospects from Hershey pushing for roster spots, the forward lines may see further adjustment before the opening night as head coach Spencer Carberry seeks the best chemistry during the preseason. Notably, PLD is likely to receive an extended opportunity to play along Ovi, like I talked about, on the top line due to his strong fit and substantial cap hit. We want that. We want the very most from him, and this is all about Ovi. This is about Ovi scoring a lot of goals. This is about Ovi catching Gretzky and passing Gretzky, and maybe Hail Mary pass, is it going to connect with the wide receiver touchdown? Can they do it? Can they win another Stanley Cup while Ovi is here? The Capitals roster revamp reflects management's desire to alleviate pressure on Alex Ovechkin as he approaches his age 39 season. Ovi, who is just 42 goals away from surpassing the NHL all-time goals record, scored 31 goals last season, marking him as only the sixth player in NHL history to achieve 30 goals at the age of 38 or older. And that's the biggest question of everything that I've talked about tonight is what kind of season is Alex Ovechkin going to have? What kind of start is he going to get? We don't know. Is it going to be a slow start? And at the end of the day, why did he have that slow start last season? And how can we avoid that? Was it training? Was it equipment? Was it nutrition? Was it, past trauma in his life? Maybe we'll never know. The one thing I know, as I always say, I'd put it on a t-shirt, as Ovi goes, so goes the Capitals. If he can get off to a great start, I think the Capitals are in a good position. The difference between this season and last season is I think the Capitals and Spencer Carberry has a whole lot more tools in his tool chest, his tool pouch, to know how to fix things if, in the event, Alex Ovechkin gets off to a slow start. I would love to hear your ideas about how you think the lines are going to shake out. Hit me up on Twitter at DanCaps218, at Locked On Capitals, or of course on YouTube, and let me know your thoughts. What do you think the lines are going to look like? Do you think it's pretty accurate to what I talked about tonight? I'd love to hear from you. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me once again on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your first listen today. Now go check out the Locked On NHL podcast, where this season never ends in providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NHL in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Listen, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.